What diseases are so terrible to have that dying would be preferable? There's that one where your soft tissue heals into bone. So as you get injured, your body solidifies, bit by bit. Edit. Fibrodysplasia ossifications progressiva, is that the one where you have to decide to be condemned to a sitting position or laying down? I heard story about a guy who had his elbow badly damaged in an accident. The doctor gave him a choice when he set the arm, elbow straight or elbow bent. The guy chose elbow bent so he could use the barely functioning arm to smoke cigarettes while using the good arm to drive. Any prion diseases? Scary shit. Fatal sleep insomnia is king among other scary shits. That one and rabies were also what I thought of. Death from rabies is almost guaranteed anyway, with a high mortality rate if the virus has reached your brain. That is why so few people have survived the disease, because most of them don't find out until it is already too late. All these diseases mentioned are why I, personally, believe strongly in the death with dignity laws. A person should have the right to say enough is enough, and to choose their passing to ensure they can exit with grace and dignity. This is just my personal feelings on this topic. As someone who works in hospice, I really wish this were available everywhere. I've seen some nasty diseases and some miserable people because of it. I work in a nursing home and we had a resident beg us to kill her. Give me all my pills at once. Put a pillow over my face, I won't fight. It's like, man, I wish I could help you lady, but legally I can't. Radiation exposure and poisoning. There was a case of radiation poisoning in Japan in 1999, where the patient was deteriorating, disintegrating on the hospital bed for 83 days after radiation exposure. His skin and internal organs broke down. He had diarrhea and dehydration. Blood was leaking from his eyes. He was leaking fluids. He could no longer eat after 2 weeks, and they couldn't administer anything intravenously due to his tissue and cells being unable to repair or even hold themselves together. He had regular heart attacks as well, to which he was revived frequently. The patient's name was Hisashi Aochi. On a note of gallows humor, that is one hell of an unfortunate surname in his case. Alzheimer's. My father is currently deep into Alzheimer's territory, and it's awful to witness. I've already had the chat with my partner, as there's no way I'm allowing her or my kids to go through that. That said, there's been news of late of a new drug that holds it at bay for longer, so there's always hope on the horizon. I hold on to the fact that there is literally no illness human ingenuity and skill can't conquer with enough time. Huntington's disease. I was a community carer for 2 years and had a client who had Huntington. Even in the year and a half I worked with her, the speed with which she deteriorated was frightening. After her symptoms started about 5 years earlier, she had been declining faster and faster. When I first met her, she could still mostly talk, eat solid food, drink things normally, and even help a little getting dressed. By the time I left, her food had to be pureed, her drink had to be thickened to the point it was jelly, she couldn't talk, was in constant pain, and all she could do was scream and make unintelligible noises. Before, if she accidentally hit you, she could apologize. By the end, she was barely even aware of it. She couldn't have catheters or stoma bags because she'd pulled catheters out with her movements, so she would have to wear incontinence pads and spend hours between our visits sat in her own filth. My heart shattered for this poor lady. Even when she knocked a bowl of Cocoa Puffs over me and I stank of gone-off milk all day, we had a bit of a giggle about that together. And her family, I get it was hard, I get she didn't want to go into a care home, but her 25-year-old daughter, who was raising her own child and was confirmed to have the gene, was trying to care for her mom too, and that was just unfair. And you could tell when she'd reached the end of her rope with that. Sounds awful, but I hope she's passed away by now. I hope her suffering is over. Suicide actually is a major cause of death with Huntington's. Its first symptom is often personality changes and a loss of rationality. I know a guy who I had been told had planned to exit when he was unable to work, having been with his mother until they had to turn off her life support. He at one point had a plan to basically do UFC as a form of accelerated suicide. Complicating matters, Huntington's also has a higher than normal rate of alienation from families and being in the criminal justice system. A friend of mine who worked in criminal justice said the story: he was a lovely family man until suddenly at 40, he became an asshole and started hitting his wife and kids. He started his jail sentence when the physical symptoms appeared and they realized he was sick. Is scarily common. The guy I knew I actually didn't like at all, since he seemed so angry and I felt like he was abusive to his partner. His partner insists that I've known him 10 years and he was never like this. So I understand it's probably the illness though. It's the most unfair thing in the world.